Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter where you are in this fine land of ours. I am just so delighted that you're able to join us today. Today's going to be a fantastic conversation, let me tell you. I'm actually really looking forward to it. If you're not sure in the title, well, it's very straightforward. It's all about preparing and positioning your company for sale. And that's a topic that is of interest to many, many people. And the response to today's webinar certainly is an affirmation of that, especially considering it's late in the summer. Hope you're having fun, folks. We're joined today by two incredible people representing WelchGroup and Murphy Business. So let me go into the logistics. Let me introduce you to these people, and then let's get the show underway. It's very straightforward. The way this works, everybody is in listen-only mode, except for myself and my panelists. We are recording this webinar. So what does that mean for you? That means if you like what you hear, you can actually listen to it again and again and again. You can share it with friends. You can take crib notes. It'll be available on demand on the respective websites within a handful of days. Because it is being recorded, we just want you to acknowledge that. And if you want to join us, there's multiple ways you can do it. The simple way is on social media, and all we ask you to do is reference the hashtag WPlanAhead. Very straightforward. And we'll monitor that. And on Twitter, we would like you to do that. And not just questions. Give us your comments. Give us your opinions. You know, we want to hear your thoughts in real time. But if you don't have Twitter handy, not a worry. We actually have built-in question capabilities, part of the service we use here. Go to webinar, and you'll see three little snapshots, whether you're using a Windows machine, a Mac machine, or even a tablet. And simply all you do is go to the questions section, pop it in there, we'll get it in real time, and then we will present it to our panelists. So in other words, what you're getting here, folks, is a chance not only to get educated, but you're getting free advice. So now's the chance to send the questions in. And if you hear anything that's provocative and you want to respond to, please do that. I mentioned that we have two amazing presenters. Well, let's meet them. The first one is Candace Enman. She is president of WelchGroup Consulting, focused on improving the value in small and medium-sized enterprises by ensuring that their profits are both sustainable and transferable. With over 15 years of financial and management experience, Candace has played key roles in all aspects of growing a business. She runs a successful Chairman's View and contract CFO practice that helps business owners think and act strategically in their company. Specifically, they assist owners in managing their growth objectives as well as preparing their business for an upcoming transition. Candace, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you, Daryl. It's really great to be here.
She's got a big smile on her face, folks. She's going to have fun. But to offset her, of course, is Sandra Harvey. Sandra is co-founder of Murphy Business Ottawa, a business brokerage serving owner-managed businesses in Ontario. She has over 15 years of experience in financial, operational, and general management of independent businesses. Her background provides her with a diverse skill set, ideal for both executing the technical aspects while managing the non-technical elements during the sale transaction. Sandra has received accolades from buyers, sellers, and their professional advisors regarding her strategic and collaborative approach during the sale process. Sandra, you sound impressive. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of course,
thank you and Candace for the invite.
Yes, well, no problem. We are so glad you could join us. And again, repeating, this is an interactive process. So send us your questions in the question window on Twitter with WPlanAhead. But I'm going to start with you, Candace. This opening slide is about proactive thinking. So talk to me about this quote.
Absolutely, Daryl. Look, I really think that Stephen Covey said it best when he said to business owners that they need to think with the end in mind. So owners need to understand and be able to articulate what it is they want to achieve and strategically look at how they will make that happen when they start their business. At Welch Group, we've coined the phrase, build your business to last decades, but be prepared to sell it tomorrow. I especially like this statement as it focuses owners on building value in their company, whether they are a startup, experiencing growth, or nearing maturity. Excuse me. Essentially, it means that you should always be running your business as well positioned as you can in order to maximize its efficiency, its profitability, and its marketability. I like to think of this proactive thinking, but I know in practice it's harder to do. So that said, it's never too late to start, and executing a strategy or strategic plan now will help make your business more marketable.
All right. So talk to me about preparation.
Okay. So I know that selling your business will be one of the most important decisions that you'll ever make. And chances are it's going to be a very emotional event. And there's a few key questions that I think you should answer at the onset to prepare for the sale. So I think you should be asking first, what is motivating you to sell? Is it because you're looking at retirement? Perhaps it's because of health reasons. We had one business owner come to us because he had a stroke and he wanted to exit the business. Perhaps it's because you're simply tired and you don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. Perhaps you've gotten an offer on your business. Sometimes we have owners come to us and say that someone has approached them to sell the business, and now they're curious about what the value would be. Maybe it's because you see that there's a lot of sales activity. I know right now in Ottawa there's a lot of sales activity in the construction area. So maybe you're wondering, is now the perfect time to sell? And maybe you're a serial entrepreneur. I met with a company a couple of months ago, actually, where the owner had created a new product. So he wanted to focus all of his time and attention on that and was now looking at selling his current company. If you recognize what your motivation is, it may change what ultimately is important to you. So for example, do you have a hard number in your head? Are you solely focused on the sales price? Do you need a certain amount to retire on or to start your next business? Perhaps it's not the money or the value figure that you're looking for. Perhaps what's really important is that you have the cash in your pocket at the end of the day. Or maybe you'd still be comfortable working in the business for a couple of years. So really it's the transition structure that's going to be key for you when you're selling. Or perhaps it's that you're in a family-run business and business legacy or the continuity of your employees is really key. I met with a business owner last week who is he sold his business actually a couple of days ago. And one of the key things for him was that all of the employees were maintained by the new buyer. So that's something that's really key. The next question that I think you should ask yourselves is, should you engage external advisors? And you need to think whether you have the time and the expertise to handle the sale. So do you understand your exit options, and can you objectively assess your business? Do you require assistance with the valuation of the business? Perhaps you think that you know the value, but is it realistic? And will the market bear that price? Is your corporate tax structure efficient? I had another business owner approach us to sell his business. They were tired, they wanted out, and they wanted out yesterday. But unfortunately, they didn't have the tax structure in place. So if they sold, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of multiple capital gains exemptions. So will you be the most effective person to market, seek out buyers, and negotiate the deal? So I'm sure Sandra will agree with me on this one, but many business owners think they can do it themselves, but it's hard to keep your business running, stay on top of the sales process, and remain emotionally detached.
What I find interesting about this is you've just got three simple questions here, right? Why do you want to sell? What's important to you? And should I engage advisors? Now, when you're talking to people who are thinking about this and you just give those three questions, they thought of them already? What's your reaction been?
Some of them have, but they haven't really pieced the puzzle all together. And I think that's what's really key, right? A lot of times when we're talking to business owners, they haven't really thought through the option. So they have a general idea of where they're at and why they want to sell. They haven't given it as much thought as they should and how they want the transaction to proceed. Especially if we're talking to a family-run business and they're simply transitioning. It might not be a sale to an external partner or buyer, but you need to start thinking about all of the options.
So that's a great point then, as they start thinking about this, to remind you that you can actually ask those questions today by using the question feature of the GoToWebinar, or you can go to Twitter with WPlanAhead. So why don't we go ahead a slide here, and I want to remind everybody that we're being joined today by Candace Enman, President of WelchGroup Consulting, and Sandra Harvey, President of Murphy Business Ottawa. And let's talk a little bit about value and business drivers as it relates to the idea of considering a financial transaction on your business.
Well, and I think what's really important, Daryl, and what I want people to take away today is really 2 points. And first, that I want you to view value differently. And the second point is that I really want you to think like a buyer as we take you through the presentation. So the definition of value. So one of the key concepts that owners need to understand is that of value. And unfortunately, when I take a look at that, I think we've universally been educated as we work in a public company where value is equal to profit. But in a private enterprise, that definition simply doesn't hold true. So if you have a buyer that's looking at your business, they're not just going to be interested in the past performance of the business profit, but they're going to be equally, if not more, interested in whether that business is going to be profitable into the future. So they want to know whether that profit is going to be sustainable and transferable. So sustainable is the ability to maintain the company's performance over an extended period of time, and transferable is the company's ability to maintain its performance without its current owners in charge. So the diagnostics tool that we use at WelchGroup identifies 18 drivers that impact value creation. And we say that value is broken down actually into two dimensions. So you have your operational drivers and your market drivers. Market drivers are really what approximate profit now. So they're all the external factors that can impact your value. So for example, does your company have growth? Does the industry have growth? Does your company have recurring revenue? What are the barriers to entry into your market? What's your brand? So does your company have a really good reputation? Do your products or does your service, is it differentiated? So are you able to command a higher margin because you're unique in the marketplace? Operational drivers, on the other hand, are really what confirm the quality of the business asset and its ability to deliver operationally over an extended period of time without the current owner in charge. And it's really describing whether the company is sustainable and transferable. So whereas market drivers have a one-to-one relationship in our diagnostics tool, operational drivers have a one-to-multi, meaning that we can drill down into each of those drivers. And in fact, there's over 50 drivers that we would assess. So for example, if I'm looking at company overview, I'm looking at the business profile. So what is your industry description? A high-level year-over-year sales and gross margin reports, the company history, the location of their operations. Do you have organizational charts? What's the corporate and legal structure? I want to know your company story. So what does the company do? How does it do it, and why does it do it? Do you know your defined market? So do you have a comprehensive understanding of your market niche, your place in the market, and a process to keep informed of market changes? Do you know what your competitive landscape is? What's your strategic planning process? So you can see that there's a lot of variables that would play into that checklist. And basically all of these drivers will form part of a due diligence checklist. So another way to look at this is if you think of your business as an engine, where the gears need to work together to drive the future outputs. So really your outputs are your revenue and your profits. And if one of the gears is damaged or broken, it's difficult to move forward. For example, we had a client where the management team was not aligned at times and actually were quite dysfunctional. So because of the underlying relationship issues were not being addressed in the company, it led to very poor decisions being made by the owners. Ultimately, some of the management team had to be replaced so the company could regain its efficiencies. So understanding the gears and how they are connected can help you measure your business's potential as well as identify opportunities to maximize its value. So some companies we work with refer to this really as measuring the goodwill within your companies. So therefore, from a positioning perspective, it's important to look at all the drivers of value in your business to determine what are your strengths, which value depressors need to be addressed now, and which value depressors can you turn into opportunities for potential buyers. So knowing the value of your business and being able to back it up allows you to always come from a position of strength.
All right. So that's a fantastic overview. Let's move into another section. All right. So let's call this section Think Like a Buyer. But if you're just joining us now, we're being joined by Candace Enman, president of WelchGroup Consulting, and Sandra Harvey, president of Murphy Business Ottawa. And they're the experts on considering a transaction with your organization. So let's talk about Think Like a Buyer. What does this mean, maximize value and marketability?
So this is really the second takeaway that I want people to have today, to think like a buyer and to really understand what is important to them. So are you talking to perhaps another owner/manager looking to take over your business? Or are they a strategic buyer? So does your business complement theirs, or will it give them a competitive advantage? So depending on their motivation, they'll want to see very different things in your business. So for example, if it's an owner or run manager, they'll likely want to know that knowledge transfer and a strong management team is really key, and they'll want to make sure that they're strong. They'll be interested if they're involved in the sales process and how you're incentivizing them to stay, because again, they're going to want to build that same team around them so that they're successful. If it's a buyer who's looking at integrating two businesses for specific reasons, such as manufacturing capability, or perhaps it's your technology, then they'll be interested in different things. They might be interested in your production process or your intellectual property. But regardless of the buyer, you need to determine the fit and anticipate what they will ask for and be ready to deliver it. And that's why it's really important that you think like a buyer. Secondly, you need to know how confidently what you're bringing to the table. So I often have owners tell me that they know their strengths and weaknesses, and I wouldn't expect anything less, but sometimes they have blinders on to the underlying issues in their business, the elephants in the room, the potential deal breakers, which I know Sandra will talk about as well, and they don't know how to tackle them. And the best way is to be honest and give your company really an objective assessment. So I remember working with one business where that they wanted to exit, but we had discovered that an employee was suing the company over a shareholder dispute. So I'm sure that would have come up in the due diligence process, and a buyer wouldn't have wanted to buy the company. Another company that we worked with, it was very evident that the owner was taking out, had a lot of personal expenses, I guess, flowing through the company, which was devaluing the company. So again, you need to step back and take a look at your business and give it that objective assessment to see what you should be doing in order to really position it for sale. So having that objective assessment of your business is key to understanding what you should focus on today to maximize your value tomorrow. So finally, you need to bring all of the detail together to create a story that can maximize the marketability of your business.
So I'm curious. You got two key things here, I think, like a buyer. What are they looking for and what do you bring to the table? How well do business owners understand this when you start this conversation?
Of what they're bringing to the table?
Yeah. Or even thinking like a buyer. Are they thinking like I want to sell as opposed to why would they buy?
I think they believe they're very confident that they know what they're bringing to the table. We often hear that they know their industry very well. They know their business. We're never going to know the business as well as them, nor do we expect to. But we do understand business. And just because you understand your business doesn't mean you're the best person to position it and to sell it. They need to step back and to think like a buyer, and that's really critical. So, I challenge businesses all the time. So if you were to buy your business today, or if you had the opportunity to buy your business today, would you? And would you pass a due diligence on yourself?
It's
a good question.
That's a fantastic question. I love that one.
And maybe I can add something to that, Daryl. Certainly, it's the type of thing that what I see is they know their businesses very well and they're very confident in their businesses, but they actually don't understand that a lot of the value is not transferable. And it's the transferability of that value that I see in transactions that's a real dilemma.
Real showstopper almost, I'm sure. All right. So then, speaking of showstoppers, also known as obstacles, how do we clear the obstacles to a sale?
Yeah, and I wanted to take a moment just to share with you guys what some of the obstacles are when we do our Chairman's View engagement that constantly come to the forefront. And the first is really this do-it-all business owner. So this is where the business owner perhaps has the octopus syndrome, so they have their hands in absolutely everything, and they are key to the organization. So what we often find is that there's been limited knowledge transfer. So perhaps their management teams aren't empowered. If they were hit by a bus tomorrow, that would be the business. They may hold the key relationships with all their customers, with their suppliers. Usually there's a lot of firefighting in the business. And the fear here is that if the owner leaves or something happens to them, that the business would fail. The second thing that we took a look at is that there's no strategic direction in the companies. So we know that owners have little time to think and act strategically, and oftentimes they haven't necessarily engaged their management teams in a strategy planning process. But I'm here to let you know that a strategic plan or a business plan is simply a document that can separate you from the crowd, and it doesn't need to take a lot of time. It can be a 2-3 page thing that really tells you where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go. And if you don't have a business plan, again, I think the business is really all about you. So I think you'll be leaving a lot of money on the table if everything is up in your head. Personally, I think packaged businesses look more attractive and don't create false expectations with buyers. The last thing that we usually see as issues, I guess, when we're doing our diagnostics is that of talent management. And for me, that is getting the right people on the bus at the right time with the right skill set. And I know that's a mouthful, but it really is taking a look at the people in your organization. So is the skill set there? Do you have qualified people in your organization? Are you investing in your human resources? This is something else that I often see where business owners are thinking of exiting their business maybe in the next 2 to 5 years. And then when we take a look at their management teams or their employees, they are also at an age where they will be exiting the company. So there's a problem there if no succession planning is happening also with the management. On this topic as well, we also see that there's oftentimes frustration with employees, that there's lack of definition around their roles and responsibilities. Oftentimes we see that there's no employment contracts in place. So again, these can all be obstacles when you're selling your business. So your job as an owner is to clear all of these red flags or obstacles that may get in your way when you're selling.
All right. If you haven't submitted your question yet, I'm going to remind you to do it now. You can do it on Twitter by using the hashtag WPlanAhead. That's WPlanAhead. Or you can use the question functionality built right into the webinar service. Simply go ahead and submit your questions because we're talking about a lot of meaty stuff here. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is when you would get into these people like Sandra or Candace and really, walk through the process and peel away the layers of the onion. This topic right now is about due diligence. Who wants to tackle this one? Candace, you're up.
This is mine. So I did want to share some due diligence items that buyers will likely request and wanted to elaborate on those for you. So they're going to take a look at your industry analysis. So how do you define your industry, and are you staying ahead of the curve? Sales and marketing. So how diversified is your customer base? Do you have economic dependence on several customers? Are your customers contractually bound? How do you track your pipeline or prospects? How well do you know your market and your competition? Take a look at operations. Do you have capacity? So is there capacity there so that the company can grow? What are the bottlenecks in your operations? So are your processes well defined? Are they repeatable? Are they documented so someone else can walk in and duplicate what you're doing? What efficiencies can be made? That's what they're going to be looking at. With respect to human resources, again, it all comes down to who your people are and really having an analysis done on them. So do you have continuity management there? Do you have the right skill set? Do you have a breakdown by functional areas? So a lot of companies that we go into don't even have an organizational chart. If we're talking about the management teams, what are their responsibilities and their backgrounds? What's the salary or bonus arrangements that you have with them? They're going to want to know long-term commitments that you've entered into. Administration for me is really all about how well you're organized. So what is the company background? So do you have, your history succinctly written down? Have you completed a SWOT analysis on the business? Really, what have been those significant developments? If we flip over to the financial analysis side, this is really about understanding what your business is worth and being able to back up your numbers. And if your numbers don't support the business story, then a buyer will walk away. Take time now to carefully look at your reporting, your corporate structure, and your financial systems. Make sure you have the ability to quickly respond to information requests and that your operational and financial reports truly reflect the business activity. So note in a due diligence that you'll want to see historical records, but chances are a buyer's also going to want to see forward-thinking financials. So I know that it can be daunting to know where to start when preparing your business for a sale. But really, I think doing nothing shouldn't even be an option for business owners. I think you need to engage in a process that takes a look at your business objectively and identifies and prioritizes what you need to work on to improve your value and position the company for sale. So our core value diagnostics that we use at WelchGroup basically gives owners a health check on their business and takes them through a pre-due diligence process. It can identify your enterprise value, the potential value of your company, and most importantly, the value gaps that you may want to address before selling. So doing an assessment will help you stop fighting fires in your companies and really focus on what's important. It can identify potential gaps that you can manage proactively. It can help you build your marketing story before you sell. It can help you respond to information requests in a due diligence process quickly to gain the trust of a buyer there. And more importantly, it can prepare and position your company for sale. So I think the key to success is really in the planning, and it's the forward-thinking owner who acts today that will be able to cash in tomorrow.
I love this next slide. This one's all about successful exits, and I'm sure this is going to have everybody listening on the edge of their seat because, show me how it worked right so I can emulate that. If you're just joining us, we've got Candace Enman, president of WelchGroup Consulting, and Sandra Harvey, president of Murphy Business Ottawa. So let's talk about the top 5 barriers to success.
Thanks so much, Daryl. So my partners and I at Murphy Business Ottawa, we've seen hundreds of transactions, varying sizes, across a lot of industries, but there's a lot of similarities to all those transactions as to what makes a successful deal. So when we first meet with a business owner, that's kind of, we start at the beginning, we get to know you, your goals, your requirements. But a lot of owners, or some owners, have not started with the end sale in mind, as Candace mentioned. On the other hand, we have many clients who have done the work before we go to market, and they are invariably always rewarded, whether it be during the operational years or as well as on exit. So part of our mission, to make sure everybody falls into that latter category, is to educate and encourage all owners that it is never too early to improve the saleability of your business. You never know when the time may come, whether it be a critical event, or perhaps you just wake up one day, come back from vacation, and realize you've given all you can to your business. You want a break, you want a new challenge. Fatigue is actually the number one reason we meet with sellers, whether they're 35 or 95 years old. So we've put together a list of 5 main challenges that often interfere with a successful sale, or perhaps even that the purchase price has not been maximized. Number 1, understand the value proposition. So this is, fair market value. Learning what it is critical. Most owners either under or overvalue. Both have different challenges. So we look at, where does the value sit? Is the knowledge all held by one person? A few customers, perhaps the revenue stream is just a little too at risk. As well, all your key revenue drivers and elements, are they secure? So for instance, if your location is key to your success, would you buy a McDonald's if you knew that that location was not going to be there in 1, 2, 5, 10 years even?
Likely not.
Not likely.
Yeah.
So, and as well, even on the personnel side, are all the key roles filled? Or, is a sales role been sitting empty for the last year and you're losing a lot of contacts? Equipment, all your capital assets, are they in good condition? All those types of elements. So in other words, what is the buyer buying? Most businesses, it is cash flows and goodwill, not necessarily a lot of capital assets. So the continuity of this cash flow, if it's uncertain, generally the value of the business is lower and sometimes even unsaleable. Timing, that's certainly time and timing. 2 different things, but very vital. You want to be in control of the timing of when you sell your business as much as possible. You don't want to be forced to sell. So if you, because you want to be taking a time where your sales and profits and all those trends are in a positive. Declining sales, those types of trends can certainly scare a buyer away, even if you have good reasons behind it. It creates a lot of uncertainty about the long term. Has the trend reached a bottom? Is it started to come back up? They don't know where the bottom is. So in these cases, buyers will require usually a large portion of seller financing, and perhaps we can cover that a little later, Candace, as part of the purchase price, or they'll simply lowball the purchase price. Ideally, a good strong 3-year of strong financial and positive trends is a very good position to be in. Time, on the other hand, it's not only a barrier, but it can actually be a deal killer. Fatigue in the sale process for both buyer and seller, it just can be very emotionally draining. There's always hurdles along the way. So having someone to manage that process and keep everyone on task is very important. Anytime you make the sales cycle longer, anything in life can happen. You can have an illness in the family, an economic change, a loss of a key customer. So reducing risk is all about keeping a tight timeline. So having someone who understands the dynamics and acts as that buffer and also keeps everyone on task and manages all the professionals is certainly a good way to tackle this challenge. As well, your time as an owner, keeping focused on operations, not having any declining or any hard impact on your business. That's really where your time should be spent. Allow the experts who are the experts in selling a business take care of that. There's a lot of hours in the process dealing with many buyers. Some of them can be tire kickers, knowing how to weed those people out so they don't waste everyone's time. Some listings I'm dealing with 50 to 100 buyers on just one sale. So if you can imagine trying to deal with that kind of cycle while running your business, could be pretty challenging. As well, you want to be protecting the confidentiality. So you want to tip off employees, customers, that sort of thing. Just stay focused on your business. Experts also, develop how to develop an auction-like scenario. So again, maximizing value and understanding norms of what works, what doesn't work, negotiation tactics, of course, and understanding the actual market and the best buyer profiles. Next is poor records, or skeletons in the closet, as we might say. Potential liabilities can certainly impact a transaction. Should they be serious, they'll definitely have a downward pressure on the valuation. And even not only on the valuation, but you might lose your opportunity to do a share sale. Instead of the buyer will require you to do an asset sale because they don't want to take on any of those liabilities. So at the end of the day, what goes into your pocket after the taxman visits you can certainly take a serious hit for some of these items. And so as we kind of go through the process, it's all about transparency. Having all the issues and challenges on the table is very important. Position them in the best light and provide solutions to them. From our perspective, as business brokers, we can't help if we don't know about them. So it's a really, the time to put challenges on the table is early up front, and then we can learn how to, best tackle them.
Sandra, have you guys had lots of surprises, like when you met with business owners and you're just starting to get to know their business and you put them for sale, and then you discover something within the business that really just halts the process?
We sometimes do, in the way that part of when we first get to know a client, we spend a lot of time in our own due diligence and learning that business in a lot of detail and digging into the financials. But this is where it comes down to that value proposition. Sometimes because a business owner is so confident in their business and it's very normal for them to have a certain situation, sometimes something will pop out that is very detrimental to the transferability of that value. It could be something as simple as I've had a situation where the main customer is actually a relative. Yeah. That there's nothing that's a skeleton of the closet about that, but the problem is it wasn't very transferable. So it's those types of things that maybe are not as obvious. Next would be the poor records, or what I would call inconsistent or incomplete records. It's not necessarily that there's anything ill intent. It's just if the buyer does not have confidence in the records, then there's going to be a lot of question, again, about the cash flow or what is the predictability of the cash flow. So good trends, consistent financial reporting, good accountants, good lawyers, they're worth the value. And so no matter what the size of your business, keep things consistent. It just makes it more predictable for the buyer as they look forward. So, and then on the flip side, a large part for the limited marketing outreach, a lot of selling business is about the strategic marketing. So who are the best buyers? What are the profiles of those buyers? How do you access them? Not only the quantity, but the quality of the buyer is really a difficult process. Putting an ad on the website is really a very small part of what we do at Murphy. It's a lot about the strategic targeting and getting to the buyers that will see the most value in your business. So that takes, it's not just about, a manager who might be able to take over your business. And often a manager is not your best option because they don't always have the capital to do so. As well, a competitor usually doesn't bring the best value to the table because they'd be quite happy usually if you are, either go out of business or they're just interested in your customer list. A complementary buyer, perhaps in a industry that can leverage your customer list and do more with it than you have previously, that is a fantastic buyer. So it takes a lot of strategy to go after them because they're not necessarily looking to buy you. It's about presenting them to you.
Sandra, I think that's really interesting because I had a client actually who was looking at selling, and we did approach one of their competitors, and the competitor basically said just that they'd wait for them to go out of business before buying them.
It's the biggest risk about going to a competitor because it really opens you up. Even if they're a trusted competitor, it just takes someone in that business to kind of put that idea out there to a customer base. And especially if you have a contracting type of company, whether it is construction, putting that out there is just very dangerous to the ongoing viability of your business. So yeah, no, great point. So next we
need to position the company for sale. So do you have a little checklist here for us?
I do, and a lot of it kind of revisits some of what Candace has shared, as well as perhaps fine-tuning it for the transaction. So when we first we've looked at the main challenges, so now we can review the items that we should perhaps keep our focus on to get our business ready for sale. First, the review of the corporate and personal structure as early as possible to minimize tax. So we spend a lot of time in those initial conversations with business owners to not just understand the business, but what's all around it, your family structure, your tax structure, because a lot of times there's some work to be done there to make sure that from a tax perspective, things are properly set. So a good tax accountant, lawyer, again, are quite invaluable so that you don't have any surprises by the time you get to the sale, because at that point it's too late to make a change. You generally will need at least a couple of years, 2 years to have things set up, and you want to fully understand if you do make structural changes, what tax impact or what tax triggers could be done.
It's funny you saying that because as I'm listening to this whole conversation, my immediate reaction is I wouldn't want to be hearing this for the first time thinking I want to sell tomorrow, right?
No.
This is a long term. You got to be planning this well in advance for maximum value.
Absolutely. So, a quick example would be we helped a client who had a whole family in their business and actually working in their business with very key roles, but only one figurehead held 100% of the shares personally. And the business was going to sell for about $7.5 million. So what that meant was they lost the opportunity if they were going to sell tomorrow, and there was a good offer on the table, in fact, all that tax benefit of all of those individuals having a capital gains exemption gone. And so it was only one person being able to take it, and the rest was full tax. So huge amount of savings could have been had in a really quite easy fashion should a family trust have been set up.
Wow.
The key here really is to be proactive, right? Like a lot of these tax structures that you're talking about, I mean, they take a couple of years to even become, effective. That's right.
Otherwise, it's, you can't take advantage of these things. They're not overly complicated to set up, but from a value proposition, inexpensive to set up. So, the sooner you do it, the better. And I always recommend, when your business is being started, set it up in the best possible way. It really is worth the time and investment. So we also establishing the sale price. A lot of people set up the sale price with what they think they need for retirement versus based on value. So it's not a very realistic way to set it up.
Bit of a disconnect there, right?
Yeah, but I think one of the easiest examples I can give is I had a meeting with 3 shareholders, And when I asked what their expectation was regarding the sale of their business, they said $3 million. And so I asked, what was that based on? And they said, well, we each want $1 million.
Yep.
So everybody would love $1 million, I know, and I certainly would too. But unfortunately, a buyer is not going to pay on those bases. It really has to do with the value of the business. So it is, again, pre-planning so that you understand what your goals and objectives are and getting your business to that point. Documenting operational processes, certainly very key, the transferability, once again, of the value. So if you lose a staff member, or whether the owner leaves tomorrow after you've sold the business, these are all things that you lose a lot of knowledge and a lot of history of the business. And a buyer will look at that as a lot of risk. So you don't want it in people's heads, whether it's an owner or a non-owner. And from an ongoing business continuity, it's a good plan. So for instance, you don't want, if you have a manager who is the fantastic employee and does everything for you, as valuable as they are, you want their processes documented. Because let's say, they, even if they're ill for a week, it can be painful. So documenting. Next, leases and location. We've talked about that, but I have to say it's often overlooked. Make sure you have your leases renewed and have a good term on them when you go to sale, if your lease is your location is so key. And the more certainty and confidence a buyer has, the lower perception of risk. So that means that the lower the risk, the more value, better payment terms, just makes the process a whole lot better.
That's a fantastic checklist. I mean, you've summed up what you and Candace have talked about here in a single slide. And what I love about that is that it's a great transition to this last little slide here.
The best surprise is no surprise. And I have to say, this is a saying that has been going through my head since university, which wasn't that long ago, Daryl.
I didn't say it.
I had a professor in university who used to repeat this line over and over in class: the best surprise is no surprise. He was a really rare professor who challenged the students to really engage throughout the semester, was very active, strategic, and in a very deliberate fashion. He helped us pre-plan, not only to do well in the exam, but to exit the course with a much better understanding. And as a result, we got a lot of value. A higher value was definitely received. So I remember his teachings today. This couldn't be more true for selling of a business. Pre-planning can save business owners from many unwanted surprises. So you don't miss the opportunity to attain your business and personal goals. Candace and I and our respective teams are here. Whether you have questions now or you'd like to reach out to us in a one-on-one, love the opportunity to help.
What's interesting is I listened to you two ladies talk. What strikes me is that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, all right? What strikes me is that Candace and WelchGroup Consulting is really well suited to position the company to get their ducks in a row. And Murphy Ottawa is really well suited to help, do the deal.
You got it right.
And so, if I was thinking of selling my business right now, and this is a cursory, I'm just thinking about it now. I'm probably, with what I've heard today, you probably almost overwhelmed me a little bit. So, does this have to be overwhelming?
No, not at all. I think part of our approach is to take it at the pace of the seller.
Yep.
And customize it to whatever their requirements are. So we sometimes will talk to people 5 years ahead of when they're interested of selling. It's all about education in the process and providing that value. And if they want to, do something in that 5-year window, that's where I love working with Candace, because we have a lot of similar philosophies as to how to develop value in business. Our expertise is the transaction only. Candace and her team, they get them there. They get them to the goal.
And I guess the flip is, if I'm far down the process and I'm getting ready to go and do the transaction, do you see people coming to you saying, before I start the process, I want to review my business basics once again. I want to review all my checklist once again. Kind of a second opinion, shall we say.
That's what we often see. I mean, people do want that health check on their business. They want to make sure that they are ready for the sale. They know that many businesses, I think the statistics is 75% of all businesses fail upon due diligence, and they're leery of that, right? So they want to make sure that they're going at it that they're going in with a really strong position in the company, that things are in order so that they can exit. A lot of companies don't get second chances. So they might have an offer on the table and someone might not, come back to the table if they fail that due diligence. So they want to make sure that they're doing it right. I said at the very beginning that selling your business is likely one of the biggest transactions that you will do, or one of the biggest events that you'll have in your life. They don't want to do it multiple times if it's not going to be successful.
All right, so that's probably a good segue to open the floor up to the Q&A. They've been coming in, but I'm going to remind everybody one more time here that you can use Twitter. And just in fact, let me advance the screen, because if I do that, what you're going to see is you're going to see the hashtag they use. It's at the bottom of the screen, WPlanAhead. Make sure you use that. Don't forget the hash. I always ask myself, is it a hash or is it a pound key? Maybe I'm just showing my age, but I guess the consensus is hash. And then the thing I'm going to do is we're going to leave the contact information up here for Candace and for Sandra. I want you to do a couple things right now, folks. If you're on Twitter, if you're social media mavens, follow them on Twitter. Do not waste a moment, all right? If you have questions and you don't want to ask them here, not a problem. You will see their email addresses there in front of you. Please reach out to one or both of them with your questions, your inquiries. They would love to continue this conversation online. And of course, by all means, if LinkedIn makes sense to connect with them, they've got a fantastic network that can help you out. So I encourage that.
Daryl, maybe I could just share something as well. Is one of the things a lot of sellers are worried about reaching out to us as business brokers is that they feel it will tip their hand that they're thinking about selling. Yeah. They're concerned about the confidentiality. Anytime anyone speaks with us, it's just automatically confidential, very discreet. And so it's they can reach out to us in any fashion. And there's always ways to just share some information.
That's fantastic. All right. And I appreciate that. And the same goes for WelchGroup Consulting as well, I'm sure, unless Candace is going to say, no, we brag to the world that you're talking to us? Or?
No, absolutely. I mean, confidentiality is of the utmost importance with all of our clients. Absolutely.
All right. So this first question is probably a soft question because we almost just talked about it. It was asked early in the show. So either one of you can answer it. The question really is, what kind of lead time should a business owner be looking at to prepare their business for sale?
Yeah, I think for me it really depends on where the business is at today, Daryl. If they've really built a strong business and put the right infrastructure in place and have the strong team and the processes, then they may be ready to go. But there's a lot of businesses that aren't there, and we typically start asking owners, what's the value? What do you think the value of your business is today? What do you want it to be worth when you exit, and how are we going to get there? And that can help us gauge in the timing of, how much preparation they need. But generally we say, if you think your value is $3 million and you want it to be, $8 million, you at least need a couple of years plus to really make a positive change in the business. What are you seeing, Sandra?
Yeah, and then from our perspective, it's about the transaction itself. If people are ready, if the company is ready for sale, or the owners are ready to sell the business, a few months of getting ready when it comes to, there's a lot of financials and packages to prepare to get to ready to market and strategy to develop. And then to market, you certainly should plan for 12 months. We've sold businesses in a couple of months. We've sold it in 6 and 9, but on average, it's 9 to 12 months to have the deal completed. If you're in a really challenging industry that has very few buyers, or that there's a lot of challenges to the industry, it can take even a couple of years. So again, it's all about being in the driver's seat of that versus feeling pressured to sell.
Okay, this question's for you, Candace, and I love the question. Whoever wrote it. They're going to call you out here. This is clearly sound by, I'm thinking, a business owner. So Candace, you mentioned that owners know the strengths and weaknesses in their business. So if that's true, why do they need an external diagnostic done?
Again, Daryl, I see this time and time again. You do need to be objective. And I think it's difficult for business owners to really be objective in their business. So I know with our clients where we've gone through the engagement, they are nervous, I guess, to be honest, to put the elephant in the room out there for everyone to see. There are things that they don't want others to know. But it's trying to take some of those weaknesses and trying to reposition them so that they can be strengths for your organization. They simply don't necessarily know how to take some of those opportunities that we see to really show them that it could be a really huge selling feature for the business. Having someone come in and guide them through an exercise can really help them, again, position the company.
All right, Sandra, this question's for you. Question is, how often do you have business owners coming to you where their value expectation doesn't align with your assessment of the business? And I know we talked a bit about this, but I guess they're looking more for a frequency or percentage.
I would say at least half the time, at least out of the gate when we first meet, there's a misalignment. But part of our process is about educating the seller, explaining, how a buyer would look at it, and give them a lot of feedback as to challenges of the process, or vice versa. It's surprising how many business owners undervalue their businesses. And that's one of our biggest concerns, if they're not going to some experts to talk to them first to understand the value, or to have someone do the transaction for them, because there's a lot of money that sometimes gets left on the table because they see it only from their very operational standpoint. They don't see how another buyer could leverage their company, or there's perhaps something they haven't tapped into. I had a client who had developed some internal software, for instance, that they just thought it was something operational for them. It was actually an incredibly amazing tool that had so many applications. It had more value than their actual business. They could have just transferred that over unknowingly. So there's things like that, again, having someone do an oversight and make sure that there's not money left on the table, that's certainly a big concern. But we find by the time we get to valuation, 95% of the time, we're aligned. It's just about an educating process.
All right. For the audience, I know you're probably all having to get on to your next appointment at the top of the hour. So why don't we do two things here? We'll take two more questions, and maybe one for each of our guest speakers. And the other thing is, I'm going to remind you all that you can email them individually with your questions that you have, and definitely follow them on Twitter to hear their thoughts, as profound as they are, as they go on through their business day in the days and weeks to come. Sandra, let's stick with you. This one's it's a good question. I like it. It's one of the ones I want to know. They're asking, have you had many businesses come to you where they're simply too late to proceed with a sale, that there's really no value in the business?
I would say it's rare, but it does happen. Usually it's because they've allowed it to wind down too far. So if a business owner who has been too tired for too long, or because they don't necessarily need the ongoing cash flow. I see that a fair amount. They decide, well, I'm only going to work so much, and I'm not going to work as many hours, and I'm going to start to scale back my staff. And then they wait too long in that wind down process. You certainly should be selling before you even consider winding down, to get the most value on exit.
All right. Candace, here we go. Last question of the day is for you. What advice do you give a family-run business who's looking at transitioning their companies to the next generation? Do they need the same amount of preparation as a company looking to sell externally? That's a great question.
That is a really great question, Daryl, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes I think maybe they need more preparation, right? I think it's the same process. When I work with family-run businesses, oftentimes, the current owners definitely want to make sure that they have a top-notch company that they're transferring to the next generation. So again, going through a business diagnostics and making sure that everything is in order, that the management team and that the family is well aligned, that everyone's on the same page, that they share the same goals and direction for the business is really key. You need to have your family council meetings. You need to make sure that the company is going to be able to transfer the next generation successfully. So it's the same process. It's a matter of, managing the business, managing the expectations, and making sure that everyone wants the same thing.
All right. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to both Sandra and to Candace.
Thank you so much, Daryl.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
And if you listen to this today, don't hang up yet, because I want to tell you that our two experts have brought up a lot of rich, meaty topics. And in the weeks and months to come, WelchGroup we'll be bringing many more webinars to the table on these very topics, bringing in more guest speakers, and we'd love to have you join us then. In the meantime, if you want to hear this again, you want to share it with key stakeholders in your organization, trusted business advisors, then we strongly encourage that. And stay tuned. We will send you an email in a handful of days once this is post-produced with a link where you can watch it on demand and share it with those very people. That's it. Thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you had a great time. Thanks for calling. We'll see you again real soon.